Political division is at an all-time high, but what if I told you that it's not just people's opinions that are causing the split? It's bigger than that. According to a recent study, 71% of Americans believe political divisions are the worst they've ever seen. But why? Is it social media? Is it the media? Or is there something more sinister going on? In this video, we're diving into the real reasons behind the divide. Did you know that social media platforms actually make money when we argue with each other? It's true. More conflict means more clicks, and more clicks means more profit for these companies. What about the wealth gap? The richest 1% of people now control 40% of the wealth in America, and that's creating a whole new level of division. Fear is another weapon in the political toolbox. Politicians know it works, and they use it to manipulate your vote. In this video, we're breaking it all down. We'll look at how the media, identity politics, and even our own psychology are working together to drive us further apart. You might be surprised by what you learn. This isn't just about who you vote for. It's about how we're all being pulled into a system designed to keep us divided. Stay tuned for the truth behind the political divide. Chapter 1: The hidden forces shaping opinions. Media's silent hand. The media holds tremendous power over how we see the world. From news outlets to social media platforms, what we consume shapes our beliefs more than we often realize. In fact, studies show that 62% of people get their news from social media. Platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok are where many form their views. But here's the twist: these platforms don't just inform, they create divisions. Algorithms are designed to keep you hooked, which often means showing you content that confirms your beliefs. This is called the confirmation bias, and it's one of the most effective tools the media uses. When a person's news feed is filled only with content from one viewpoint, they become more likely to distrust opposing views. And that's how division begins. According to a 2020 Pew Research study, 55% of US adults say the news they see on social media is often biased. But how much is this really shaping politics? A lot, it turns out. People who spend more time on social media are 20% more likely to have extreme political opinions. Even if we try to avoid it, media bias becomes part of our daily lives. Social media platforms are designed to amplify engagement, which means conflict is encouraged. More clicks equal more money. It's a business model built on keeping us divided. If the media didn't sensationalize, would political divisions shrink? Maybe, but likely not anytime soon. Remember when Facebook was blamed for swaying elections? Experts argue that the sheer volume of divisive posts helped shape voters' perceptions. This isn't just a US issue either. Similar patterns have been observed worldwide. So, while we think we're making informed decisions, the media is quietly steering the ship. Chapter 2: Identity Politics. The new battlefield in today's political landscape. Identity is everything. Whether it's race, gender, or class, identity politics are reshaping how we vote and who we support. This strategy isn't new, but it's certainly more prominent now than ever before. When politicians focus on personal identity groups, they create a feeling of solidarity among certain voters but alienate others. In 2020, nearly 40% of voters said issues related to race were a key factor in their vote. What does this mean for political unity? It means that politics is no longer just about policies, it's about who you are. Identity politics can empower marginalized groups, but it also sharpens divides. We've seen this with movements like Black Lives Matter and Me Too. While these movements are important, they also put people into categories that can create tension. In the book The Racial Contract by Charles Mills, he explains how identity politics often reflects historical power imbalances. Political figures know this and use identity to mobilize specific groups. This strategy works, as seen in the 2016 US election when many Trump supporters rallied around the idea of American identity. On the other hand, Joe Biden's campaign focused on unity among diverse communities. Identity politics creates an emotional pull, but it also fuels division by making people feel like they belong to different tribes. It can help raise voices that are often ignored, but it can also deepen the us versus them mentality. If we're all divided by identity, can true political compromise ever happen? Some say no. Chapter 3: The Wealth Divide. How economics fuel the fire. Economic inequality is a silent but powerful divider in society. In the US, the wealth gap is growing faster than ever before. In fact, the top 1% of Americans now control about 40% of the nation's wealth, according to the Federal Reserve. This economic divide isn't just about money, it's also about power. When the wealthy hold so much control, they can influence political decisions that favor their interests. That's why policies that help the rich often create a backlash from the poor and middle class. It's no wonder we see such a stark divide in political views between wealthy elites and everyday workers. People in lower income brackets tend to support policies that push for wealth redistribution, while the wealthy often advocate for tax cuts and deregulation. These differences drive a wedge between different groups, making compromise harder. Economists argue that income inequality leads to political instability. According to a 2019 study by Oxfam, the world's richest 1% are responsible for twice the carbon emissions of the poorest half of humanity. These stark disparities breed resentment and create a sense of injustice. Think about it, how many times have we heard the phrase, "the rich get richer"? It's more than just a saying, it's a reality that influences political decisions. Economic inequality isn't just a factor in voting, it's a driving force behind political divides across the globe. In countries with high wealth inequality, polarization is typically stronger. This divide will continue unless something changes. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Stay tuned for more eye-opening insights. Chapter 4: Psychological Warfare. How fear is used as a political tool. Fear has always been a potent political weapon. Politicians know that when people are scared, they are more likely to rally behind leaders who promise protection. In fact, a 2018 study found that fear-mongering political ads increase voter turnout by 15%. But it's not just about fear of physical threats. Fear of economic collapse, terrorism, and even cultural changes can push voters to one extreme or another. This is where political leaders use tactics that play on people's insecurities. When politicians say, "If you don't vote for me, everything will fall apart," they're tapping into fear. It's a strategy that works. Fear often leads to a strong desire to preserve the status quo. A good example of this is the rise of nationalism around the world. Leaders who stoke fears about immigration, economic instability, or loss of national identity use these issues to divide voters into those who feel threatened and those who don't. And fear isn't just emotional, it's biological. Studies show that fear can actually make people more rigid in their beliefs. When we feel threatened, we cling to our political tribe even tighter. When voters are afraid, they're more likely to choose the strongest candidate who promises safety. This is why fear tactics in political campaigns often seem to work, even when the claims are exaggerated. The fact is, fear sells, and it divides. Chapter 5: Echoes of the Past. Historical roots of political polarization. Political division doesn't happen overnight. It's built over time, often rooted in past conflicts. One of the earliest examples of division in American politics was the Civil War. But that division didn't end in the 1860s, it has echoed through the decades, shaping today's political landscape. The Civil Rights Movement in the 1960s, for example, introduced a new form of political polarization, especially in the South. And even after these monumental shifts, Americans remained divided on issues of race and equality. In fact, according to a study by the Brookings Institution, political polarization in the US is at its highest point since the Civil War. History has a way of setting patterns that continue to influence us today. When people feel threatened by change, whether it's cultural, racial, or economic, they often seek out political leaders who promise to preserve the old ways. This is why, when examining political division today, we can see traces of historical battles over race, class, and culture. These historical divides don't just vanish, they continue to fester in modern-day politics. Understanding where these divisions came from helps us understand why they're so deep today. History shapes our perspectives, and those perspectives influence how we vote. Chapter 6: The Social Media Frenzy. Dividing for dollars. Social media is an unexpected but powerful force in the political division game. Platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram are more than just spaces to share cat videos or vacation photos. They're profit-driven machines that thrive on engagement, and conflict is one of the best ways to generate it. A 2019 study by the Pew Research Center found that 64% of Americans believe social media platforms increase political polarization. Social media platforms don't just report the news, they shape it. Algorithms are designed to prioritize content that sparks strong reactions, whether it's anger, joy, or fear. The result? More divisive content gets shared, and users are exposed to more extreme viewpoints. This creates a feedback loop where people only hear opinions they already agree with, reinforcing their biases. In turn, they become more entrenched in their views and less open to compromise. If you want proof, just look at how the 2016 US election was influenced by social media. According to The Great Hack, a Netflix documentary, political consulting firms used social media data to target voters with highly personalized ads, many of which were designed to provoke fear and anger. These targeted ads, often spreading false or misleading information, played a major role in shaping public opinion. Social media doesn't just amplify political messages, it amplifies division. And this trend isn't slowing down anytime soon. Social media companies profit from division, and that's not likely to change. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. You won't want to miss out on more revelations about how politics and society are shaped by forces we often overlook.